And
didn't have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you had the prior record or that you were not cooperative or
but
whatever.
You know the sad thing about that whole situation is the fact that the inmates, if you didn't already have an appeal in reference to, harsh, getting a lot of harsh time in reference to your sentence being embellished, if you didn't have an appeal in, you can't put one in now.
So it's not going to be retroactive. It's only going to apply to those folk whose cases were already under review.
But the sad thing
is that something that the court ruled as part of their decision?
Yeah, they ruled on it, but how can you rule unconstitutional?
Well, after the court ruled that Bush v. Gore applied only to that case and to no other case that it will ever decide, I became convinced that the court can do just about whatever the court wants to do. Yeah. And it is really somewhat frightening because we believe in the rule of law in the United States. I understand that you're going to be making a trip to Washington soon?
Yes, I'm making a trip to talk to Congressman Danny Davis.
From Chicago?
Yeah, from Chicago. Last year he came up with a bill, H.R. 4036, to reinstate the federal parole, but he introduced it late in 108 Congress.
Okay.
But it died in 108 Congress in November. So now he has to reintroduce the bill. And what the bill entails is bring the federal parole back into the federal system. And I talked to Congressman Davis, and I want him to make it retroactive.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that does he have any bipartisan support for the bill? Has he got any Republican co-signers? It's a tough environment in Washington these days.
Yeah. Well, last year he didn't have anybody, but I hate to say anybody, because the Honorable Benny Thompson from Mississippi and Charles Rangel.
He had Democrats on the side, black Democrats.
Yeah, and how that worked, you got once the bill is introduced, the only way the bill can stay alive, you got to get enough co-sponsors.
Right.
And I realized, with talking to Congressman John Lewis, I realized that, I thought all the congressmen was on the same line.
At least all the African American ones.
Right. But I realized through talking that a lot of Congress don't know anything about other congressmen' bills.
I see. That if it's not in my committee,
I'm not interested in it.
Or I may not be familiar with the facts and this sort of thing.
So I would be talking to Congressman Danny Davis, pushing him to introduce the bill again. And what I'm going to do, once the bill is introduced, what I'm going to do, I'm going to lobby. I'm going to try to go to all the federal prisons and state prisons too, and to encourage all the inmates to encourage their families and friends to call their congressman that represents their state and start putting pressure on it. And I'm glad you gave me the opportunity to come on this show to be able to voice my opinion.
Well, there are some startling statistics in Georgia. These are the ones I'm most familiar with. 1 out of every 15 Georgians is under some form of correctional supervision, whether it's in jail, on probation, on parole, in the federal system, in a county jail. 1 out of every 15. That is twice the national average of 1 out of 32. You may say, well, if they do the crime, then they must do the time. But we're incarcerating people at a higher rate than South Africa. We're incarcerating people at a higher rate than the old Soviet Union, which was the evil empire, to let some tell it. And so I don't want to make a speech, but at the Rainbow Push Coalition, we do deeply care about this over-incarceration because a lot of it is discretionary. You get the same, I talk about the criminal justice system like a long hallway. And it's got doors all the way, sort of like Alice in Wonderland, got doors all the way down the hallway. But the doors are invisible. And the doors have keys. Some of the doors are probation and pretrial diversion and NARPROS. And all of these ways that you can get out of the system, at the end of the hallway is something called prison. And only the low income, the poor, the underrepresented have to walk all the way down that hallway. most people have the keys to get out somewhere before they get to the end of that hallway. So if it was all just fair, and everybody who ever sold a piece of cocaine went to jail for the same amount of time, then you could say it's fair. But what I know from having practiced law for a good little while is that it is very discretionary. Whether I decide to charge you with simple possession or possession with intent to sell. One is a misdemeanor, you get a slap on the hand, go to rehab. The other is mandatory 5 years in confinement. And it's just sometimes just a matter of how some district attorney or U.S. attorney was feeling that day. So I know I've gotten up on my soapbox now, but you're always welcome to come and talk to us about it.
I also want to give another statistic.
Okay.
Do you know every black person that we graduate, 100 black people are arrested? Did you know that?
From high school?
From high school.
From high school? No, I did not know that. That's startling.
Do you realize that it's taken $1 billion to give to the Federal Bureau of Prisons just to house the inmates, which that's well over $25,000 a year?
I know that in Georgia it costs $18,000 a year, and that's about 3 times what it costs to go to the University of Georgia.
Correct.
I also know that the average inmate in Georgia has a 9th grade education. And I know that people who graduate from high school have less than a 1 in 10 chance of going to prison. I also know that last week the Georgia General Assembly passed a bill that would allow private companies to build plants inside of prisons. The same young people that we can't seem to educate.
But we can put them in prison and make them work.
Put them in prison and make them work.
And without giving them any 12 cents an hour, 15 cents an hour. We're working for 8
So we've got our work cut out for us. I think there's a role for churches and families and everybody to play in this.
It starts in the church. That's where we go to get our healing, in the church.
And I really believe, I'd like to say to young people, if you're tempted to sell cocaine, find something else to sell. Cocaine is something sent from hell by the devil.
That's correct.
And it is one of the worst spiritual battles that you could ever find yourself in. If you want to sell something, sell cars or computers or paper clips or anything, if you can sell poison, you can sell a legitimate product.
That's correct.
And I don't know any drug dealers who after 10 or 15 years are still doing it. All the ones that I know who were doing it 10 years ago are locked up.
Yeah, that's correct.
It's almost 100% probability of being caught. So while people like me and Mr. Jones work on helping folk get out and not go to prison, you young people find something else to do. Would you agree with that?
I agree with you 100%.
I don't want anybody to think that we're condoning the sale or use of drugs. That's not the point. But our system is broken, needs to be fixed. Right here in Georgia, we're spending $1 billion a year on locking people up.
That's sad.
Georgia doesn't have $1 billion. Georgia got pollution and poor schools. And right now, we're about, if we don't do something about it, to delay the reduction in class sizes in our public schools for another 4 years, because we can't afford to reduce the size of classes. But you never hear anybody complain about how much those prisons cost.
Yeah, and still you never hear anybody complaining how many prisons they're putting up.
Yeah, there are some cities in Georgia that are actually built on the prison industry. Milledgeville, Georgia, is no secret. If you took the prisons out of Milledgeville, I'm not sure what people would do there for a living other than the college.
That's correct, and that's sad.
It is sad. Mr. Jones, are you available to come back and be with us again? You've got a lot of great information.
Definitely, I would be glad to come back. And
we got to help keep getting this word out so that people understand there is something you can do about it. Just stay away from drugs, and you can be in touch with your congressman.
You can have to, we put the congressmen, men and women, in office, and we have to let them know that our vote counts.
It counts if we require it.
Right, and they have to listen to our issues if we push it.
I want to thank you for being here with me today. I'm Janice Mathis. You're watching Issues, brought to you by the Rainbow Push Coalition. Our guest today has been Mr. Garry Jones. He's an advocate for justice.